Yo, what's good? Welcome to the Arlington Cinema Drafthouse podcast. This is your host, Petey Steele.
And your host, Elena Torres. And today we have a very special guest making big moves in the DC comedy scene. Everybody's talking about her. She has a very interesting life. We have a lot to ask her about. Please welcome the hilarious Patty Mata.
Yay! Yeah, it's me, Patty Mata. Guys, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the show. So, Patty, I have seen you ripping it up in these DC comedy streets. How long have you been doing comedy now?
I feel very grateful that you say that. It's also funny because I've been doing it for a little over a year now. Mm-hmm. And the imposter syndrome just hits so hard when people say things like that. You're like, am I just failing? No, but I've been doing it for a little over a year and it's been a blast, honestly. I love doing comedy.
That's awesome. How have you had any like breaks where you noticed like things, you started getting more time, or was there a joke that you started doing that started helping you? Because I feel like I met you at an open mic a while ago and you were like very fresh. And and that was maybe like less than a year ago. But from then to now, I feel like I see you everywhere. Like you're doing great, you know, you're on bigger shows, you're doing mics, but you're doing great showcases and everybody's talking about how funny you are. Somebody once told me that you were too funny, too early. So have you noticed, when did you kind of notice things start to move for you a little bit?
I think it's a couple things. I think for one, I feel like I had to just get over myself, as far as on an ego level of being too afraid to try things and put myself out there. I feel like that's such a huge barrier to actually growing, is you're so worried about what does this person think, or trying to impress people, as opposed to like, I love doing this. This is an art. I get to be creative and just have fun. So I feel like when I shifted that, it helped a lot as far as not being afraid to go after those opportunities. But honestly, I just feel like the thing I feel the most grateful for in comedy is just the relationships. I feel like when you have folks who just believe in you, people who've been doing it for longer, who are just like, hey, you may not feel ready for these opportunities, but I want to help you get there. I think that is something that I didn't anticipate being such a huge part of this, but the mentorship piece has definitely been a big thing. So I feel like those two things definitely have helped a lot.
So different to when I started comedy. I don't know about you, Petey, but like this new generation of comics, I've noticed like the new people coming up, it's so nice.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Who was it was it you or somebody who like brought flowers to somebody for the first time they got on the improv? I was like, that is a really different vibe.
Right, wow, right.
And I started like really different vibe.
That was not me.
No, it was like Peter, you're not as in this, but like this new generation of comics, it's like really weird. They're like it's like a very nice experience. Your first year of comedy, like look how much Patty's glowing time in her first year of comedy. I would like
you're like I'm not threatening to throw myself off a building yet.
Yeah, I mean my first year of comedy was horrible with that type of, like from other comics specifically. Like people were really mean, really mean.
Yeah, it was rough when I got in it. I mean, it was like a gauntlet. Like even people that are mentors to me today kind of were hating on me. Randolph told me, thought I was like kind of doing a put on. He didn't realize I was like authentically who I was until like a year and a half later. And funny enough, that named you Patty is like somebody who was doing great for someone new. And I was like, wow, like he doesn't typically give, positive feedback that fast.
She disappeared.
I saw.
Yeah.
I was like, Patty, you there?
She's here. So much for new comics being nice. They just hang up on us. Oh, she's gone again.
Hey. I'm so sorry. I don't know why it keeps kicking me out, but
it's kicking you out?
Yeah, it'll literally like it just ended. I just assumed that the call ended by accident, but I think it's fine now. It should be fine. I took my headphones out in case that was like a contributing factor, but
all good.
I was like, yeah, I don't like what Petey's saying, so I'm just gonna.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We're talking about how nice the new generation of comics are, and then you hung up on us.
We're
Like,
nice until you start talking. We're just like, you know
yeah.
what? I have more important things to do.
Did you start comedy with friends, or were you just like by yourself and then you made friends?
Okay, so this is what's so funny is I was working part-time for a building where I was throwing events for the building, and I hired Brock Snyder as our vendor for a comedy show. And when we were not interviewing him, but we were just talking to him about, the potential of him throwing this event, I told him, yeah, I've, had an interest in comedy. He was like, you should perform at the show that we're doing at your apartment. I was like, absolutely not. I am not going to embarrass myself in front of people that I have to see every day in my building. But then I ended up, long story short, I lost a bet, and I take bets very seriously. If I make a bet and someone holds me to it, it's like a blood contract situation. So I ended up doing the show and then loved it. But it took me a few months to actually start doing shows because I didn't know. Like, there's not really a blueprint for people who've never done comedy to know how to start. So I started with some bringer shows that Brock had introduced me to, and then from there, met people. But yeah, Brock Snyder is the guy who kind of got me into it, which is really funny origin
That's
story.
so hilarious because very similar to how I got started there.
Oh, really?
In 2010, there was this open mic called the Looking Glass up in Petworth. It was this bar, and it was the only Monday night mic. So all the big people in the scene would come. At that point in DC comedy, there wasn't even a single mic every night. When I like officially started in 2012, I opened up one on Fridays at the Dancing Crab, and everybody flocked to me because it was like, holy fuck, there's a Friday night open mic. And I was like, wow, I'm doing something special, even though I thought this was like 101. But anyway,
Right.
and this guy I knew who was a regular there, a friend of mine, said, hey, there's this open mic. I bet you would be funnier than 85% of the people there. And I said, oh, bullshit, because I know I'm funny like in the street and stuff, but I always thought
In the street.
yeah, right. But in the
Great.
sheet, there you go. I thought it was something completely different. And I realized doing it, there was a little more overlap than I thought because I killed. But like you, then I think I had that imposter syndrome. I thought it was a fluke. And then I did it 9 more times in the next 2 weeks, and every time killed except for like the last time. And then I was like, all right, I think I can do this, but I'm not going to commit right now because there will be some bombs and I don't want to deal with anything that. I was finding a job.
Sure.
And then I stopped. And then after a year of doing social work, I was like, I need to do something more in my evenings besides come home and like watch a movie and play pocket pool and go to bed. This is just not, this ain't it. So then I
Right.
stopped doing it again. And yeah.
What a journey you have been on. What a journey we've all been on, honestly.
It's true.
To
What,
still
what,
be to
what
still
a
be
journey.
here.
And you guys, Petey and Patty, both do social work in the day,
Which is so fun. Such
right?
a fun.
Well, Petey kind of does. Petey doesn't really anymore, but dabbles in social work. So how's that going with comedy?
It is really interesting. It's kind of I totally understand the thing of I do such a serious job, and it's nice to be able to have some comedic relief in a very literal sense. But I was thinking about it this morning where it's like, it's so funny how I talk to my clients and we're like, hey, how's your sobriety going? Or how's this going? And then I go in the evening and I'm like, hey, do you guys do crack? Like, it's just this really funny contrast thing. If you're talking to people about really serious, deep life issues, then you come on stage and then you're just being really silly or talking about these things as though it's not like a big deal. But I found like the balance to be really hard because I feel like comedy is one of those things where it can either give or take everything from you if you're not careful, even just on an energy level.
I'm gonna go with take. That's
Yeah, it will take.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with take on that.
Yeah, it will just run you dry in every single way. And so it's just like even with things like, I remember even 6 months ago, I was like, wow, a mic at 10 p.m., that's totally fine. Now I'm like, if I am not in bed by 10 p.m., I'm gonna pass away. Like, there's no way I'm gonna survive till the next day. So it's been good, but I've not had to pull back, but I've had to be a lot more intentional about how I do comedy, to preserve my life, basically.
Yeah. You also have another job. Is it a job? You're a pastor also, correct?
Well, so I actually recently transitioned out of being a pastor. And so I just started social work. So I've also going through this massive work shift. And the thing that was actually so funny is one of the things I loved when I was a pastor in comedy is I loved the shock factor of being on stage talking about these very serious but like silly topics and being like, hey, by the way, I'm a pastor, and then just seeing the shock on people's faces because they were like, I cannot imagine the combination of being a pastor and doing comedy. It seems like a very contradictory path.
Really? I feel like it makes total sense. I feel like one you get to be dirty and the other one you don't. But
Yeah.
they're basically the same shit. I mean, right?
You're like, this is your outlet ultimately to say everything that you cannot say to
Yeah, one you
anyone.
can talk about anal, one you tell people not to do it. I feel like that's
You know, I being a social worker, having done that and saying it on stage, I got more of that reaction. Like, because I would come out blue, tell the stuff I always tell, and then be like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm a this," and they'd be like, "Whoa," and
Right.
that reaction. Pastor, in some circumstances, like some of the churches I know in DC, I could see how it would make perfect sense. I know some like really comedic who also were dirty pastors sometimes that'll come out and say, like, there's this black church I know that one of my buddies goes to, and the New Year's Eve sermon, the bishop comes out and he goes, "The word this year is better. We got to do better this year." And then he goes, "The hoes better stop hoeing." That was like the first admonition to the congregation, and it's like, well, all right. I mean, I guess you have your truth there, but
Yeah.
what
yeah.
kind of pastor were you? What religion?
So it was non-denominational Christian church.
Wow.
Which I feel like when I say that, people have like definitely like a specific image in mind where it's like trendy, hands in the air type of church experience, we were like a small little church. It was like kind of like family oriented, which I liked. But yeah, it's so funny. I've been to church services where like a pastor is talking. I'm like not like writing down what they're saying as I'm gonna make that into a joke, but sometimes I'm like, man, I'm super like creatively inspired sometimes listening to pastors talk. So I'm like, you're such a good storyteller. Um, but yeah, I just find it funny in comedy where you're always trying to figure out what your point of view is as a comic and communicate that, and it's really easy to get boxed into like doing one thing or people believing one thing about yourself, and then you start saying more information about who you are and people go, what, like that doesn't check out. And so I feel like the thing about comedy that's interesting is making sure that the audience can almost like accept that there's like a really diverse range of things that you are and can be. And you're not just like, I'm not just a woman that like talks about girly things and like how guys break my heart. It's like, no, like, we have ranges of thoughts and beliefs, about things. So
Yeah, I would say my topic or subject matter is more like non-denominational, but my like joke structure is more Catholic.
sure. That is really funny. That's a really funny way of framing that.
Style, like, faith is actually a pretty fluid thing throughout life, I've found. I was raised sort of Catholic. Now I am kind of an atheist, but I was a more militant atheist like in my 20s. And now I just don't give a shit. I'm just like, okay, it's weird, but I've never thought I'd come to a place of peace like that where I don't care what anybody else believes that much, so long as they obey like laws.
As long as they obey laws, sure.
Yeah,
I feel like
as long as they're not murdering people, it's cool. Yeah.
Right. You're like, hey man, believe what you want, but as soon as murder comes into the picture, we're just not on the same page. It's a very California laid back mindset.
Yeah.
I respect it.
What,
Yeah.
how, what's your, why did you decide to leave being a pastor? Was it because of comedy? Was it, are you still religious? Did it have something to do with your faith?
I love it. My favorite thing is when I tell people, they're like, wait, you're not a Christian anymore? And I'm like, no, 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 not necessarily that. So it's another story for another day, but long story short, I think what I realized is there's so much about being a pastor that I loved, and then there are some things that I just felt like were no longer aligning with who I am, what I'm pursuing, or just even honoring to how I'm wired, I guess. And I'm really passionate about community work and was kind of missing that aspect of social work, kind of being involved in the community. And I know that comedy definitely affected that a lot as far as just like availability. Like part of my pastoral work was being available when people aren't at work, and comedy is basically that. So even just on a time frame, that was kind of a conflict. And so I think comedy definitely has a role in playing into that. But and the other thing too is that I feel like just in general, being a pastor, I really loved it. I think right now I'm kind of rediscovering a more creative part of myself where I'm trying to pursue things to help unlock that as opposed to kind of like boxing me in, and so which is why I love comedy, because I feel like comedy is just a space where you get to explore creative endeavors in a really cool way.
Sure. I have to ask because when I heard your name, I remember thinking at first, all right, she's Hispanic. Then I saw your government name, which I won't reveal. But what I then thought was like, if this is a stage name and she's Hispanic, that's so cool because it translates to like Patty Kills as like
right, right. Yeah, no, I am just white.
Oh, okay.
Spicy in the way that I'm white from Canada. But I married a Filipino man, and that's his last name. I have never changed my name legally to said last name for a couple reasons. One, just for visa things makes it complicated, but just in general, I'm like the logistics of changing your last name is insane. Like an absolutely insane endeavor. But I actually have never thought about even just like the translation of, because yeah, I think it means man who kills, right? Or something like that.
Mata is
It
a
just means
verb.
to kill.
To kill,
kill.
Patty kills.
It literally means your name is in Spanish is Patty Kills.
Which I only wish people, the general public, knew that, because I feel like nobody really takes me seriously as like a physical threat. But I can be like, it is ultimately my identity that I could kill you. Should I choose to do so? But yeah, people tend to view me kind of like a small dog, where it's like, I know you have the spirit to inflict injury, but you cannot carry that out because of your size. So
How
I just
tall
want
are you?
everyone. How tall am I? I'm 5'3.5".
Oh, wow. I pictured you taller for some reason.
Petite
Honestly,
and smiley. I could see it. Petite and smiley. Lots of smiles from Patty. Just
yeah.
hanging out in the back. I can see that. I
I
can
really, honestly, it makes me feel really good that you thought that I was a lot taller. A lot of people make jokes that I have a friend who keeps telling people that I'm 4'11", which no offense to people who are 4'11", but it is very insulting to be seen as like much shorter than you are.
definitely not 4'11. That's
Definitely
4'11 is
not.
memorable.
Yeah, but definitely
That's memorably short. No
yeah,
offense to anybody who's 4'11, but everybody
yeah,
refers to you were 4'11. You know what I mean?
yeah, for
I
sure.
think it's
No
the
height
long
shame.
hair. Like I typically don't associate people with long hair as being beneath like 5'5" or so.
It's so random.
Yeah.
How many how
It's
many
so
do you
random.
interact with just on a week to week?
How many short people?
Or just I just am so curious at the range of women that you interact with to where that's like the conclusion about hair length to height.
A lot. I'm telling you, I feel like it's there's not too many Guinevere's beneath like 5'2".
Petey's like, I am literally surrounded by women. I'm
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
surrounded by women of all heights,
Yeah.
and they 100% of the time never have long hair if they are
Yeah.
below height.
Yeah, I know it's maybe
A
not
lot.
my feminist stance, but yeah.
Petey, is there any other information about women that we should know generally? Maybe educate us?
Oh, okay. Yeah, about the size of their cerebellum. No, I don't know. I'm
That's
listening.
Way to
Learning.
way to get out of it. I was wondering what you were gonna do with that.
yeah. I, I was
I
like,
was
this is
really, I
gonna
was
go in
like,
a fun
this could,
direction.
I know Petey very well, and this could go south to a point where we might need an edit.
Sure.
There might be some things where Petey's gonna make a joke, and then after we finish the podcast, we're gonna have a phone call, we're gonna have a group call and be like, look, do we keep it in?
It's like, hey, Petey, love you, but you can't publicly talk about women that way anymore. It's not, does not work out.
Only privately with us.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Only on our text chain. Good.
Fun and games. So, wait, Patty. So, where you did say Canada? Are you from what part of Canada?
I spent most of my life in Nova Scotia, Canada, so East Coast.
Dartmouth.
Do you just say Dartmouth?
I did.
Do you know? Okay, first of all, have you been to Nova Scotia? Is this why you're?
I have not. Here's the story with Dartmouth and me.
Okay.
Well, Lena may have told you, may have not, someone else, but I am a big rap guy, huge hip hop guy, and I even battle rapped before in like Baltimore and stuff and other places. And they're one of the legends of like the spoken word kind of form of battle rap where there's no beat is a guy from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, the dark side, Nova Scotia, named Pat Stay. He actually was killed about a year ago, sadly.
Oh my gosh.
But he is absolutely just phenomenal. And there's a whole league of battle rap out there called King of the Dot or King of Toronto or whatever, where all these guys get together. And there's American battle rappers, there's Canadian ones. Occasionally there's an issue with guys coming from America because they have prior felonies and can't get over the border to battle. So then they have to like wait till they're cleared or blah, blah, blah. It's a whole cool little subculture of rap music. So that's how I'm familiar with that.
Okay, I just want to say Petey is a complex, layered human being. I feel like the more that you talk about your layers, like levels of interest, it's not necessarily shocking, but it's more just like I just know that there's so much more about you that we don't know. But
Correct. This is why I love Petey, because
yeah,
Petey's not what he seems. You see, Petey is one thing, and then the more he is an onion of interesting, intelligent things.
Well, thank you.
Petey, it's true. You were so interesting that way.
and no, being able to reference Dartmouth is like a deep cut in that obviously people who are in Nova Scotia like that's not an unfamiliar place, but for folks who know where Nova Scotia is, I have never heard someone go, "Oh, Dartmouth." Like I've heard people go, "Oh, Halifax," but Dartmouth is a deep cut, and honestly, props to you for knowing a man. I didn't know the guy you referenced, but I'm grieving currently. That's so sad. But yeah, no, Nova Scotia definitely has a lot going on. Objectively, one of the most beautiful places in the world. Unbiased, obviously.
I have a friend who just moved to one of my friends from high school just moved to a town in Nova Scotia that looks like a storybook. I forget
yeah.
what it's called. It's like in the middle of a mountain. All the houses are a different color. It's like, it's beautiful.
Yeah, that is Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is like every Wes Anderson movie
Yeah.
or just very colorful, very small towny. The unfortunate part, I've been telling people this recently, is I feel strongly about the fact that since I've moved to America, I'm just so much worse of a person. I feel like I just remember when I've come back to Nova Scotia and like just interact with people, I'm like, these people are so nice. What happened to me? I think I'm nice now, but I'm like way more aggressive. Just, I think, angrier overall. I don't know what it is about the culture in America, but Nova Scotia truly is just the most lovely place.
Where in Nova Scotia are you from?
So I'm from Halifax. I'm like 30 minutes outside of the capital. So I'm like 30 minutes from Dartmouth. The capital is Halifax. But yeah, well, this is so embarrassing. I grew up in a town called Sackville, unironically. But every time I tell people that, they're like, well, that's kind of a weird name. But yeah, I spent most of my life there and moved when I moved to Philly in 2017. Um, but yeah, I love the place. Recommend people to go.
Why did you move to Philly? What made you leave?
So I was dating a guy who I'm now married to,
Oh,
conveniently.
yeah.
And I also was planning on doing my master's, and I don't know, like when you're young and you're like, I can just move to a totally different country not without thinking about it, but genuinely out of like, oh yeah, that's like such. Now, as a 28-year-old, if someone asked me to move to a different country, I'd be like, absolutely not. Unless my lifestyle is going up significantly higher, there's no way that I would just uproot and go. But I'm grateful I have, because obviously I've loved living in the US for many reasons. But
Wow. No,
How'd you meet your husband?
my ex-boyfriend actually introduced us, which is so
Great.
funny. Yeah, yeah, which we always laugh at. Because I actually, when my ex-boyfriend introduced us, the way he talked about my husband was, I was like, "Are you in love with him? Like, do you want to be with him?" Because the way he was describing him was like, "He's just the best. He's the funniest. He's the nicest." And so I was just like, "Okay, I feel like I feel like eventually you're gonna come out and tell me like I actually want to be with him."
who's
Yeah.
it gonna
But
him or me? Yeah, right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we always laugh at our origin story for that
So
reason.
were you dating the other guy when he introduced you?
Yeah, we were both dating other people at the time. And so when we met, it's like, sometimes when you meet people and you have like instant connection and you're kind of like, all right, reel it back. First of all, your ex-boyfriend is introducing you to someone that he wants you to like, but not in that way.
Right.
But me and that guy had dated for like close to 3 years, and when we broke up, I actually saw, my husband's name is Noah. I saw him at a conference, and I just had this like new confidence. I was like, I'm single. I am truly ready to mingle. Like I
So he was
can.
living in Canada too.
No, he was living in the US.
Okay, but you were living in Canada and he
I
just
was.
like visiting Canada, or like how
So
did
the conference, it was a church conference. The conference that I went to was in the US.
uh
So
sure.
really, really small world situation where it was like, how in the world after like 3 years later am I running into you
That's it.
in New York? Like it was such a random run-in situation. So, yeah, yeah. And he's 4 years older than me. Which when now that's such an insignificant amount of time. But when you're like 20, it's like, oh my gosh, a 24-year-old guy's interested in me. Like that's crazy. Um, so yeah, really funny connection.
So then you guys did long distance and you moved.
And then I moved, yeah. So
Yeah.
this is unofficially a green card marriage for sure.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Don't tell the government, but that is what it is.
Secret safe. I'm a product of a green card marriage. And I also moved here to get married from another country.
Oh
But
wow.
I did not I had the passport already. I was lucky enough to have that.
Right, right,
That-
right. You're
But
like, I
I
choose
did,
you. I don't need you in the same way that Patty needs her husband, but I do want you and love you. So,
yeah, I did do that. I did also move here from another country. And especially I feel like DC is very specific. But like
mhm.
East Coast in general is very specific, at least from where I came from. Did you find it to be like really, did you have a lot of culture shock coming from Canada?
Yeah, I just think, to me it was okay. So this is such a silly example, but like one of the things is when I would take Ubers when I first moved to the country, I would get in the front seat because I thought my Uber driver must want to connect and chat and like get to know me. So I'd get in the front. And at some point, I had an Uber driver go, "Please do not sit in the front. Like, please sit in the back." And I realized, I was like, okay, like people here don't
Wow.
people here like, and actually that's like a very respectable thing to be like, please don't try to get to know me so intimately, but it's just, I think the relative openness to connection is just a little different. Whereas like in Nova Scotia, like again, I'd be sitting at a coffee shop, random people are just chatting it up, just talking, whatever. Whereas here people are a little bit less friendly, which is again fine. It's just normal. I think the other thing, to me, the biggest shocker, honestly, of moving to the US was the college situation. Because my college tuition, I was at one of the more expensive schools, not because it was one of the best, it just happened to be more expensive. And it's like 7,000 a year. And I'm talking to people here and I'm like, I don't understand how more people aren't selling their bodies to pay for college. Like this is such it just makes me laugh when people are like, yeah, I got like an arts degree. And it's like, how much debt are you in? They're like $200,000. I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. It does
The
not make any
fucking rip
sense.
off.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a fucking ripoff. I was actually talking about this. I just came back from a family vacation and my parents are like old school. My dad was an immigrant and like my parents are very obsessed with like college. And I was talking to them and I'm like, I don't see millennials having this like gotta get you into a great school because that's gonna lead to this. Like I feel like millennials and under, like I'm a millennial now, I have kids, like I don't value college the same way because
Right.
you don't, it doesn't necessarily guarantee you anything
Absolutely not.
later
Like
on,
I
especially if you're getting an arts degree. I have a theater degree from one of the best schools in the country. No, I mean, not to brag, but like it didn't do shit for me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is.
Shit for me.
So I got my master's to have job security. I was like, this is how you get job security. You have high level of education. I did my master's in Philly. I did an accelerated program, so it was just a year. And my master's for a year here was more than my entire undergrad in Canada. And it was the most, and I tell people now, I'm like, if you're applying for jobs, you will be so heartbroken time after time. Guys, I applied for an entry level job after getting my master's with the Girl Scouts and got denied and was like, this doesn't mean anything. I don't know why I've paid so much money so that people I don't even want a job with are rejecting me. This is too much. So yeah, college now feels very, I feel like I need to get a PhD. But then if I get a PhD, people are like, "Oh, you're actually also overqualified. We can't pay you."
Yeah, if you're gonna get a PhD, you better be a professor. Or who cares?
Yeah, it is unfortunate
It
how the
is. I think you're going to see, and you're seeing it now, a resurgence of like the trades. Because I think for a long time, these big degrees got people to say, well, I don't have to actually like do physical labor and I can make like a decent living. But that just doesn't seem to be the case as much. So they hear, oh, hey, I don't have to take on debt. I can, get in this steam fitter's apprenticeship and I'll bust my ass for 3 years and go to class after spending like 4 a.m. to 1 p.m., fixing pipes or something underneath a government edifice. But I'll have that trade and make like 150,000 a year in the next like 5 or 6 years. So, hey, we're all going to get fucked either way. So it's kind of returning back to blue collarman
Yeah,
shit,
totally.
America.
Yeah, and it's funny because I so respect Gen Z for being creative with what jobs look like, but it drives me crazy when I see TikToks or things on Instagram where people are like, "Do you want to make 5 figures every month? It's as simple as blah blah blah." And I'm like, I don't understand the economy. I just don't understand the economy, how people are struggling to find real jobs, but somehow via the internet, people are making millions for just posting things. Or like, I just am like, I would love to make a living wage. Well, preferably, actually, number one, I'd love to be independently wealthy and never have to work in my life. That'll never happen. So then the second one is just work a living wage job that I can afford to do fun things every so often. But yeah, this economy, guys.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, being independently wealthy is how you can make 5 figures a month.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice.
Yeah. Petey also has a lot of great financial advice. No joke. That's true.
Take
Oh
it
my
from a
gosh.
That's true. One of the many things, right? Many talents of Petey. Great financial advice. Not kidding.
I
want to make
actually
a
am like,
billion
please.
dollars, just invest $1 billion.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
So, Patty, what do you have coming up? What are your goals for the rest of the year?
So I think my goals are I realize it's so one of the things that even what you were talking about as far as even just comparing generations of being in comedy, I feel like what I've observed from my cohort, I guess, is there's so much pressure that there's a hustle that sometimes feels disproportionate to our level, meaning like, okay, I've been doing comedy for like a little over a year. This like sense of, I think in my mind about like a few months ago, even my goal was, okay, there's certain rooms that I want to get in by the time this time rolls around, which is such a hard goal because first of all, it's not my control. Like I can do things, but ultimately I'm not the one doing the bookings. And then I think when you do that, it's so easy to get lost in what the actual goal of comedy is, which is to be funny and to work on being funny.
Yeah.
So I feel like right now I'm trying to be a lot more intentional with writing. I'm trying to be a lot more intentional with creative goals like writing sketches, writing scripts, like just trying to stretch myself to just really working on the actual craft and not just the appearance of doing well in comedy. So I'm trying to do things a little bit more discreetly, I guess, on that level of just trying to get better. And working with people that are going to help me get better. But I mean, I think the other thing is I never thought, I don't know, every 6 months my goals as far as what I'm hoping on a long-term level comedy will be, but I don't think I ever thought, I really would love to get paid. But I'm like, no, I really want to like I really want to be a working comic in a way where we know what I'm doing is not just for funsies, but I'm making money doing it. I'm having fun. I'm getting better. I want to continue to get better at hosting. That's why I've loved working with the Drafthouse. I feel like the Drafthouse has been such a space where I've like loved just having space to perform in front of bigger crowds and get better at hosting. So I feel like mainly, honestly, is I'm like just trying to quietly get funnier. That is my focus right now.
That's a great goal. And it's interesting you talk about the pressure. I think one of the unfortunate things with starting comedy, and you'll see this, is that you have to kind of start so invested. You just have to. You have to do
Yeah.
so much comedy in the beginning, and you have to go so hard.
Yeah.
Then you kind of come out and you're like, wait, do I even like this?
Yeah.
It happens like a few years later, you're like, is this for me? I'm not even sure. I've been doing this
Yeah.
so much. And then you spend so much time kind of like racing after the stage time
Yeah.
that you forget, like, wait, I'm not sure. And then you hit a point where you have a lot of it. Maybe I'm just speaking myself. And you're like, I didn't really think this through, but here we are,
Yeah.
Totally.
you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, as somebody who hasn't really done it so much in the last since the pandemic, I could count maybe like 10 times live since that happened. I just kind of am like, I'm happy in a lot of ways, more so than I've ever been. But on the other hand, I'm like, wow, that was a big sunken cost in a way. Every now and then it kind of crosses my mind like I should be out there. I could have done other things, but that time is past. But I also know somewhere every now and then when I think of something really funny that I think has to be said or whatever, that I will eventually return. And, every time I do briefly return, I think the last was the State Theater back in May, and I had like a great set and everything. And then Jose asked me to host the next month, and I was like, actually, I can't do it because I had something else. But I was like, he's like, they really like you there. And I was like, well, I like it there. Eventually, I will reemerge, but it's just going to be a different thing. Also, being 42, you just get older, you get more tired. You talked earlier about going to bed at like 10. I'm like, yeah. Fuck this. Like 11:30 open mics. I don't see it.
Absolutely not. Yeah. No. And
the day you do,
I know. And the day that you do come back will be a celebratory day,
Yeah.
But
Thank you.
yeah, it's one of those things where I remember one of my first shows, I had a guy tell me, if you're not performing 6 nights a week, you're not going to get better.
Sure.
And he was telling me he hits like at least 2 or 3 mics a night in those 6 nights. And I remember because at that point I was doing maybe 1 mic a week, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And so it's funny because when you start, you're watching what everyone else is doing and you're going, oh, I should be doing that. Like if you're doing 3 mics a night, I should be doing 3 mics a night. And what I realized is like, there have been nights where I've hit that many mics, and by the 3rd set, I am worse. I have gotten worse because it's just not, every person has to figure out how to do comedy in a way where you're actually growing.
Yeah, there is such a thing as doing too much. I've definitely hit that point many times where I'm doing too much, and I'm actually not as funny because I'm just
because you're exhausted, you're depleted, you get overly critical of yourself. I'm super pro taking breaks. Like there are weeks where I've had a lot of book shows, I've been really hitting the pavement, and I'm like, the only way for me to continue doing this is if I do it in a sustainable way. And if that means needing to take the week off so that I come back like fresh faced and feeling like I believe in the gift of laughter again, like I will absolutely do that. But yeah, I've had to stop letting other people be the reference point for how I do comedy, because I'm just like, we're different people. We have everything about us is different just on the basis of like, I'm me and you are you. And yeah, because otherwise I've just seen myself completely be drained by comedy when I don't do that. So
sure. I mean, even speaking to like the lateness of it, and granted, I did say earlier I am a little older, so the sleep hits earlier, but I was just reading a book about how much like attention has shifted and how we as a country have gotten so terrible on maintaining deep focus on things. But it talked about how if you're awake for 19 hours, you start making mistakes almost as if you're like drunk. And I can remember like doing late nights outside of the old DC Drafthouse, and I'd have these conversations and these comic hangs. And I've been in recovery from alcohol for like over 17 years, but then I'd wake up the next morning with kind of like a weird sleep deprivation hangover, and I'd like review and self-audit the things I said at like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. to other people, and I'm like, God, I'm such a fucking asshole. Did somebody spike my Fanta or something? Like
right.
Ugh.
You're like, I unfortunately can't say, hey, it was the tequila. It was like, no, that was just me. That was just 100% the most authentic version of myself that offended you. And that's the other thing. I stopped drinking a year before I started comedy, and I'm so glad, because I'm also a lightweight. Like I've gotten tipsy off of drinking like half one of those like little cooler situations. And I just feel like I've talked to so many comics who are like, I was super blasted when I performed, and it sucks. I feel like it's never a good look to be super drunk while you're performing.
I don't know how people do that. I mean, I've been sober for a very long time, and I was sober when I started comedy, and a lot of people are like, I can't do comedy not like sober at all. Like I've met a lot of comics who have like talked to me like, how do you get on stage not having had like a drink or like smoking some weed before or just something to relax you? I'm like, how do you get on there and remember what to say?
Yeah, totally. I slur my speech just because I didn't get enough sleep. Like I say stupid things again just on my own. So having any kind of fuel to saying stupid things is unhelpful for sure. It's also funny when you watch someone doing comedy and you're like, you're definitely just slightly over, I think, what you can to actually do this. But
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, I black out on stage all the time without alcohol.
Yeah.
I say, like, people will tell me, specifically when I get like pissed off at a crowd, I will just black out. And I will say, and I don't remember like what I say to them, but
Mhm.
it's like something I'm working on in comedy. Like I'll go overboard. Like I'm just too mean sometimes. And then I'll
Yeah.
get on stage and comics will like laugh and tell me what I said, and I don't remember saying that. I was just trying to figure it out, and I was just mad at them.
Yeah.
All the time, I black out.
I
I
love
do.
Great.
I love an alter ego moment,
Oh yeah.
especially when in a mean space.
Oh yeah.
Stage.
Yeah. Big part of my life. Doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, Patty, what shows do you have coming up? Tell us, where can we see you? Where can we get at you on socials? Tell us all the things.
Okay, well, I'm gonna be one of the places I've loved being at regularly is Room 808. That's been like my favorite room. Honestly, I 100% recommend whether I'm there or not. It's just a great space.
Agreed.
Otherwise, I've got a couple of shows in Maryland. I'm actually headlining for Encore at the end of March, which is going to
Nice.
be fun. But yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Patty B Mata or Patty B Killer. Patty B
Yeah.
Kills. Um, and yeah, I would love for you to come, for you to come to a show.
That's awesome. Well, Petey, where can they see you? Anywhere? Are you doing shows lately?
So if you want to follow me, Steelborn DC on Instagram. I'm not really doing the Facebook so much. Just request me, and if I know you're someone in the thing, I'll honor it. Shows, I don't have any. You'll see me at baseball card shows if any of you are in the hobby. I'm slanging and banging slabs. So but I'll be back on this podcast talking shit. So if you enjoyed it, come back. Go see Elena and Patty's shows. There you go.
Okay, wait, but really quickly though, Petey, where can we see you rap? I feel like that's what everybody listening is ultimately wanting answers for.
Sure. You go on YouTube and you can type in Steelborn versus Luck Dollars. I'm not kidding. That's the name. It's Steelborn. And that battle is up there, but also I'll be dropping something sometime soon because I like rhyming again, all that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Awesome.
Elena, what you got?
Find me on Instagram, Elena Blondita. These days, there's a lot of Spanish going on for me. So this podcast is one of the few English comedy things I'm still doing. But if you are listening to this and you speak Spanish, Room 808 is a place Patty mentioned. We have a show there March 8th here in DC. I'm opening for Carlos Vallarta in Spanish here in DC on May 10th. And I think that's it for DC. If you're not in DC, I'm on tour all of March in Spanish with Angela Colina. All those dates. I'm doing Philadelphia, Richmond, Dallas. You can find all those dates on my Instagram, Elena Blondita, TikTok, Elena Blondita, YouTube, Elena Blondita. Thank you guys so much for listening. See you soon.
All right. Peace.